Greetings, fellow moviegoers, and welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and this is my pet gorilla, George. Well, folks, we found it. The real movie that lit the fire for modern day comic book movies. After watching through all the Superman films from the 1970s and 80s, I'm finally ready to move on to my favorite DC superhero and favorite superhero overall, Batman. Batman has been around for a very long time, ever since the 1930s to be exact. However, in regards to adaptations, they were usually based around the more sillier golden, silver, and bronze ages of comics. That is until the event in comics simply known as Crisis on Infinite Earths, which reinvented the entire DC Comics continuity and developed Batman into the character he is today, with stories like Death in the Family, Year One, The Dark Knight Returns, and my personal favorite, The Killing Joke. But how would you adapt that version of the character to the big screen? After all, the last Batman film was that. Enter director Tim Burton, who at the time was booming after the release of his hit film Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice, 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 Beetlejuice. He was brought on to direct the movie to give it a distinctly dark tone. As for who would play Batman, it was hard to replace Adam West based on recognition, but Warner Brothers settled on Michael Keaton, who also played the title character in, well, you get the idea. Fans weren't too thrilled, as Keaton was mainly seen as a comedic actor in the likes of, okay, we get it. But his real comedic appearance before that film was actually Mr. Mom, which was a 1983 comedy written by John Hughes. However, like most Hollywood protests, the casting actually turned out to be very good. The movie itself made a ton of money at the box office, becoming the highest grossing film in 1989 and one of our many critics at the time. But after 33 years, does the film hold up? We're going to find out today. This is Tim Burton's Batman. Gotham, the gritty, crime-coated city in the East Coast, is incredibly lucky, being protected by the vigilante known as Batman, played by the aforementioned Keaton. However, when a member of the mob becomes a horrifying clown-looking criminal known as the Joker, played by Jack Nicholson, and attempts to take over the city, it's up to Batman to stop the villain and save the city. Needless to say, this movie is the one that brought Batman into the limelight as a character that was dark, brooding, and very much a character. I cannot thank the movie enough for doing so. While the story isn't too complex, it feels like it leaped off the pages of a comic book, much like how the Superman the movie felt like a live-action comic book as well. However, in this case, Batman wins this battle due to the fact that this revitalized Batman and made him the character that he was supposed to be again. But what other aspects of the movie are notable? Well, let's find out, starting with the characters. As far as adaptations go, this version of Batman is very well done. Unlike West's version, which constantly annoyed me, Keaton was Batman. He had the perfect voice, he had the perfect costume, he had the perfect gadgets, he even had the perfect Batmobile. Yes, while he does Glock people at one point or another, which isn't true to his character, I can sort of forgive that because at least it didn't destroy who the character was, unlike West dancing and going out during the day. However, if you do want to see a version of Batman who kills that is Bruce Wayne that sucked, just wait till we see Batman vs. Superman and how I think about that film, in the far future at least. The supporting characters like Alfred and Gordon are also in this movie, and while not my favorite versions of these characters, I do like them quite a bit. Michael Goff plays the softer side of Alfred, who is supportive and like a good father figure, and Pat Hingle plays Gordon in a way that I really like, but it wasn't the definitive way to have Gordon until Gary Oldman and Jeffrey Wright's portrayals in the Dark Knight trilogy and Batman, respectively. As for Vicky Vale, she is a damsel in distress, like Lois Lane in the Superman films. What I prefer about Vicky is that she's intelligent. She tried to find out who Batman was, she was independent, and most importantly, she was fun. Kim Basinger really killed it with his performance and does a great job hiding her southern accent, which I didn't know she had until recently. But A hero is only as good as their villains, and the villain in this movie is the Joker. And holy crap, Jack Nicholson is deliciously great in this movie. He plays off the mannerisms the character had in the comics this movie was based off of, where he constantly kills without regret and not just prank them like Cesar Romero. Has no real goal except to make others live in his madness, and is just fun. Yeah, Jack Nicholson is very fun in this role. His lines are quotable, his design is perfect, and everything he does in this movie is such a blast to see. Fun fact, Nicholson did the movie only if he got top billing, and he ended up getting a ton of money from each of the 4 films, despite not being in 3 of them. Oh yeah, the Joker dies in this film. Now, if this were in a shared universe, I would have a problem, but as it stands, this is mainly a standalone project with no major connections. And Jack Nicholson as the Joker is still an immensely satisfying villain, so I can't complain about his death. Besides, you do kind of want to see this monster die after terrorizing Gotham. And as for Bob, he's great. I have nothing else to add. Bob is a great character, and there's nothing that can change that. He's the Boba Fett of the movie. He doesn't do much, but we all love him immensely. Alright, that's enough about the characters. It's time to talk about the effects. Now, before I get into the actual effects, I want to talk about the first shot we see Batman in, where he's animated in a 2D style. Now, I couldn't find the exact photo on the internet, so I'll just say look it up on YouTube where you can find it. But I'll say this, it's a very unique sort of thing that fits in well and teases a very great animated show in the future. But we'll get to that later. As for the actual effects, hot damn, this movie looks fantastic. The choreography for the fights scream comic book action. The Batmobile roaring across the streets is super fun. The Batwing making it up to the moon is the coolest shot ever. And the miniatures and explosions look really cool. Seriously, the effects in this movie hold up super well. As for the music, enter one of my favorite composers of all time, Danny Elfman, who created such an iconic score, hands down. From the main theme, my personal favorite, First Encounter, the theme during the scene where Batman battles Joker's goons, and the finale music are some of my personal favorites. Definitely one of my favorite scores of all time. And then we come to the action. The iconic scenes in the alleyway, the Axis Chemicals battle, and the Batmobile scene and the final battle are all very fun and definitely some of the highlights of Batman movie action scenes in my eyes. They're not as cool as the Batmobile chase in the Batman or a ton of the action scenes in Batman the Animated Series, but they are still a hell of a lot of fun. So overall, I freaking love this movie. Not only is it my favorite live action Batman movie, but also one of my favorite all time DC films. I definitely recommend this to any Batman fan and any DC fan as a whole. The movie obviously earns the score I gave it. It gets a 10 out of 10. Definitely a highlight of the DC Comics adaptations. Well, that's it for this review. Feel free to leave your thoughts on the movie in the comment section below, and tune in next week when I take a look at the very dark sequel for our winter finale. With that said, my name is Mr. CCS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap. See you next week. Goodbye.